Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So a quick update for you. I've been incredibly busy. I haven't been able to get this video off the ground that I wanted to get off, and it's because the situation has been progressing so fast. But I believe we are at a breaking point here. I believe we're at the point where this is about to go exponential. So I have that and a lot of other things that we have to talk about in today's video. There's just so much to talk about. I want to start off by talking about intuition. I don't like starting off with these rhetorical statements, but it's important, I think, in light of things, because as many of you know, I've actually been very optimistic about containment, and I've been sort of downplaying this whole event since the start of this thing. And you might not glean that when you look at my thumbnails, because they come off as very alarmist, and the point of that is to bring attention to preparedness. At least what may come of this is that more people gain an awareness of how vulnerable they actually are in this world, this global supply chain based world, and they start to, take that into account in their everyday lives and start to be more self-reliant. I've heard it said that intuition is based on the facts that you do not see. It's what your unconscious mind perceives, but your conscious mind just can't make sense of, but you know that something is wrong. It's also called the normalcy bias, and people's reluctance to accept impending disaster because, either it's just too hard of a pill to swallow, or it just seems like nothing can ever go wrong. And I think that's what's happening right now, and it's very difficult for people to parse out this reality because we've been exposed to so many Hollywood movies about this exact scenario that if you're a true skeptic like myself, you're always questioning, well, is this just based on my indoctrination from Hollywood, that I'm imagining this pandemic fantasy, or is this actually a real event that's happening? And we're going to talk about the facts and the numbers and some other information that has come to light that, to me, indicate that this is very much about to get crazy. So I don't make a lot of predictions on this channel because nobody wants to be the guy who's out there, screaming that the sky is falling and then it doesn't fall, and and then you have a vested interest in a way in it falling because you don't want to be wrong. But I hope I'm wrong, because if I'm not wrong, life is going to suck for a long time, and either the economy is going to get bad or a lot of people are going to die. That's really the two options that we have at this point. We have containment, which is going to entail economic disaster on a scale possibly never before seen, or we're going to see a 1% case fatality rate at minimum for about 2/3 of the world's population, which is going to amount to about 75 million people. Do the math on that, and that's no lie. Now, we know that there are two strains that are circulating. There's the L strain and the S strain. And this is based on a Chinese research paper. I don't know, if this has been replicated or, much more about it. You guys probably know as much about it as I do. But the gist of it is that there's one strain which is more deadly, and it is also more infectious. That's the L strain. There's also the S strain, which is less deadly and less infectious, but it's more pervasive, they think, because it is under the radar. So, it goes undetected, whereas the L type, that's discovered, and, it's the one that's quickly contained, even though it's more infectious and more deadly. The L type is still circulating around the world. It's been found in the United States, and it's been found that you can get both at the same time. So one doesn't necessarily immunize you from the other. So there's just as much a chance that the L type is going to become very pervasive if the healthcare systems become so overwhelmed that containment reaches that breaking point. So while 1% doesn't seem that significant, and trust me, I'm one of these people who think, just like a lot of people, like, what is 1%? There's a good chance that, you're going to get it and you're going to have a few symptoms and you're going to get over it, right? You may do that, but your grandparents may not do that, or people who who are over 50. This could cause some serious complications, and maybe not at the start. If you're one of the lucky ones who gets it earlier, and yeah, I did just say that, if you're one of the lucky ones who gets it, well, you still have a 100% functioning healthcare system, and you can get the healthcare that you need, then you're much better off than if you get it later on and you're stuck in a stadium or a hotel or school gymnasium or wherever you get warehoused, because that may well be the case, because we're not going to have the capability to build all these makeshift hospitals. I mean, we may, but that would be surprising to me if that's something we were able to mobilize to do like they did in China. I'm going to talk more about the China numbers later on. One thing I want to talk about first is that the governments of the world are preparing. They are preparing for something big. Honeywell and 3M, some of the biggest manufacturers of personal protective equipment, respirators, half-face respirators, N95 masks, they've basically suspended the distribution of supplies to private businesses. So it's all going to government now. There's many governments around the world who are restricting the exportation of personal protective equipment. Russia is not exporting any personal protective equipment. They have always been a big exporter of military surplus and that sort of thing. They're not doing it anymore. India is restricting the exportation of pharmaceuticals. They now have a cluster emerging in India, and it's about to get really bad there. It's about to get really bad everywhere, guys. Italy, where they make some of the best gas masks in the world with the Mestel company, by some stroke of luck, I'm still getting supplies from them, but I don't think that's going to last that long. I think I may be able to haggle one more batch of masks out of them before they start to crack down and their government says we're not shipping any more personal protective equipment out of here because we're going to need it. But I tell you that the governments of the world, especially the United States, is preparing for something big. And that's why you're not going to be able to find a Honeywell or a 3M full face gas mask respirator anymore. Now the Mira company, Mira Safety, they're still in production. They're going to try to ramp up production. Once again, they get their stuff from Europe. So as of now, you can still get their personal protective equipment through us or through them. I'll post links in the description, but it's still back ordered for 4 or 5 weeks. So now in terms of the numbers that are coming out of China, my theory about that now is that China was holding its breath for a long period of time, and they did everything, arguably, that was humanly possible to contain it. Sure, you could say, you know, they probably tried to cover it up at the beginning, but, you know, after it was out, they did everything that was humanly possible. I mean, they closed down cities, they basically committed economic suicide to try to bring it under control. They tried to hold off until, you know, the rest of the world caught up in terms of cases, until the rest of the world started reporting more cases than were coming out of China, and that really takes them out of the spotlight. So now, if there is a resurgence there, they're not the only ones in the hot seat. They've held it off long enough now that they're no longer in the economic crosshairs, because you can only restrict imports from so many countries in a globalized world, to the point where you're either just going to have to live with the fact that 1% of 2/3 of the world's population is probably not going to make it, which doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, that's close to 75 million people. If we're looking at like a 1.5% case fatality rate, World Health Organization is saying 3.5. We don't even know how deadly the L type actually is, because the case fatality, they haven't separated the L type and the S type. So for all we know, this L type could be far more lethal than 3.5%, and the S could be very mild. You know, that's why you're seeing numbers in South Korea that reflect a very mild, you know, maybe less than 1% of cases of people are actually falling ill to that. Whereas in the United States right now, the case fatality rate is higher. It's around 5%. So, and that's very significant. That doesn't seem like a big number, but I'm constantly telling people, like, people don't understand. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I understand the gist of it. If something is going to spread, diseases that are highly lethal do not spread that well. That's why Ebola burns itself out. You can see it from a mile away. You can quarantine people from a mile away. When they get sick, it doesn't take long for them to get sick. There's not a long incubation period where it can spread. That's why HIV is so successful, because it's the silent killer. So I think the reports about it being under control in China are just a ruse. I think that the many of the governments of the world understand that this is going to be a problem. And all of the things that I've speculated on, I'm almost ready to just go all in on and say that yes, they are trying to minimize panic. The World Health Organization is doing their best to postpone the economic collapse. The governments, especially of Canada, are trying to downplay this, even though it's spreading. There's no stopping this right now. There's absolutely no stopping this. This is going to spread, or we are going to go into lockdown and the economy is going to totally collapse. People are going to stop going to the movies. There's going to be no more rock concerts. There's going to be no more social gatherings. People are going to stop going to fitness centers. They're going to stop going to church. Social distancing, if that becomes the norm, people are going to be out of work. Businesses are going to go under, and it's just going to create a huge disruption to our lives. Schools are going to operate remotely, as they say, but the logistics of that are going to be very challenging because not a lot of places have the infrastructure for something like that set up. So that's going to take some work. You are likely going to see in the coming months a greater military presence in your urban regions as the military starts to perform more domestic duties and takes on more of the roles of emergency services when they get overwhelmed. And this is going to happen everywhere. They're already calling it in Britain that the military is going to perform domestic duties like policing and putting up medical centers, medical tents. And where I live, in the middle of nowhere, everybody's just walking around oblivious. You know, I said in my last video that the next city that was going to get hit was going to be Edmonton or Calgary. And sure enough, there's another case in Edmonton right now. Now it's going to go, my next prediction is Winnipeg, Montreal. If it's already in Edmonton, then it's going to be in Calgary soon. Then eventually it's going to be where I am in Saskatoon, which is right in the middle of smack dab nowhere. But Winnipeg, I believe, is a central hub. It's a geographical center of Canada, and it's a big trading corridor with the States. So it's probably already there. It's already everywhere, I believe. It's just not detected yet. And now testing is going to ramp up. So we're going to get a better picture of how fatal this actually is, because I'm guessing that the reason why the WHO is rolling with that 3.5% number is because they know that a lot of people who may have passed away probably passed away as a result of this, partly, but they were never tested for it. The economy is no better example of the normalcy bias at work right now, because what we've had is a huge economic downturn in Chinese output in the first quarter. We're on the brink of society grinding to a halt. Okay, yet the Dow Jones is still at 25,000. It's dropped 3,700 points or something like that, which is huge. It's one of the biggest drops in such a short period of time in history. But people still have this fantasy that it's going to be okay, and that's why you're seeing this seesaw effect where it's going up and down, and it's a roller coaster. Every day it's up 1,000 points, it's down 1,000 points. It's on the brink of probably going into a deep recession. There's two options at this point, and I'm guessing that we're probably going to get a bit of each. One, economic disaster due to this social distancing stuff and the lockdown, and or a lot of people are going to die as a result of this. How many borders do you close before you completely eviscerate your economy? So I know I said I was going to do the big fancy video with my best and worst case scenario predictions, but this is just progressing way too fast for me to take the time to do that. I would much rather do a video that talks about personal protective equipment, and that's what I'm going to be doing. It's going to be released this Sunday, so stay tuned for that. I believe it's much more important to focus on practical preparedness than even speculative videos like this. But, you know, I've been very conservative in my views about this matter, but I believe that this is the time where I can officially call it and say that, yeah, we're on the brink of a true SHTF scenario. It's not going to be a Mad Max scenario. It's going to be a long, drawn-out, crappy experience. Life is going to get very interesting, but, you know, at the end of all of this, I believe that we are going to have a much stronger world. I think we're going to learn a lot more about the importance of diversifying these supply chains and not just relying solely on one superpower to produce and manufacture all the world's products. So I think that, you know, this is going to be a big learning experience for humankind. Now, last but certainly not least, you should probably plan for some service disruptions, be it by way of water shortages, even due to water treatment plants not working as they would in peacetime, you know, disruptions to the power grid due to workplace absenteeism. We're going to see workplace absenteeism. The British are predicting up to 20%, but I think it would be much, much higher. And you're also going to see an economic catastrophe emerge from people not working and not getting paid, and there's going to be strikes, and this could be a real mess of a situation if it gets out of hand, which I can't see it not getting out of hand at this point. Either way, we're going to have to eat some crap for the next year or so, whether that means a lot of people get sick and die, or, you know, we put the economy on hold for a year. Either way, it's going to get bad. So anyways, guys, if you found some insight in this video, please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do that right now, because none of these videos get monetized anymore, go to CanadianPreparedness.com. We do have some personal protective equipment remaining, but it's incredibly scarce. I'm expecting a shipment from Italy. I'm expecting a bit more stuff from Mira. I also have, you can also go to Mira's website directly and get stuff, but there's going to be a huge back order there as well for probably a few weeks. I'll post a link in the description if you want to do that. And food is the next best seller, and then I think candles are the next best seller. But also, like I said, prepare for disruption of services, because that could potentially happen. The good news is we're going into summer here, so, you know, we may get some relief from the warmer weather, but that just means that the fall or in the winter time, this is going to come back with a vengeance. So either way, it's going to be a long year. Anyways, guys, take care, stay safe. Thanks for watching Canadian Prep.